Hello, and welcome to another show of the Chambers Talk Show. Today we are going to be talking about, can I just take a moment? I know we live, I really don't care. Technical difficulties have me extremely frustrated right now. I need to take a woo song. All right, let's do. Welcome to the Chamber Talk Show. Today we are going to talk about how social media plays a part in how we view ourselves, our own self-esteem, and body image issues. Social media has its advantages. It allows you to broaden your audience and speak to people that you might not normally be able to come in contact with, but there is a downside to technology. Sometimes technology works and sometimes it does not. But when it comes to social media, one of the negatives about it is that you may see images portrayed that may give you a false sense of what healthy, of what natural, and what beauty actually is. There's beauty in our strength, there's beauty in our flaws, and there are beauty in our scars. Now, let's get to our two special guest hosts who I am very, very honored and proud to not only call colleagues, but friends. First, we have Dr. Diane Davis, board certified cosmetology dermatologist, as well as Dr. Nicholas Jones, also known as Dr. Nip and Tuck, plastic surgeon to the stars, residing in Atlanta, home of the ostentatious Brazilian butt lift. That being said, first I want to bring in Dr. Diane because she is my colleague, she is my friend, and she's also my dermatologist. We've talked several times about my struggles that I have with acne. And as a woman, I never experienced acne as a teenager. I didn't experience acne until I got pregnant, had my daughter, and outflux of hormones. It was something definitely to deal with. And I thank God for you for being a listening ear. But in your practice of dermatology, what do you find to emotionally burden your patients the most when it comes to their skin?
That is a really good question. And I just want to say, first of all, thank you to all of the fabulous ladies of the Chambers Talk Show for having me. And to also my dear friend, Dr. Kanisha, because we have talked in lengths about this, and I love you dearly. I do see a lot of patients with acne, but I do think when it comes to skin of color patients, probably what I see that is more of a burden is post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. I feel like for a lot of people, we can deal with the pimple. You know, we will pop the pimple. We will put something on it to get that pimple to dry up, whether it is toothpaste, alcohol, peanut butter, Windex, or medicines. I've heard it all. But when you have that brown spot that is left over, I find that really can be frustrating because it takes so long for the brown spots to fade away. And, for a lot of us who necessarily may not want to wear makeup, it really affects our self-confidence and self-esteem to have brown spots on our face that last for a long period of time. So whenever I see patients who come in, even if they don't necessarily have active acne going on, I will still address their concerns by discussing acne with them and also putting them on a treatment regimen that's going to prevent them from getting new pimples, because I just don't want those new pimples to come back in and affect them. But then I will also definitely focus on ways that we can address the hyperpigmentation or the brown spots or the blemishes that are left behind.
Okay. I definitely, and that was an issue after we conquered the acne, was dealing with the hyperpigmentation. And I love my melanin. And
yes,
I love my brown skin, but when the discoloration started to happen and it really bothered me, and my thing was I didn't want to appear vain, but it really did bother me.
Right.
To not be able to just get up and go, because normally that's what I do. I would get up, literally put on lip gloss and go, but having to apply powder and foundation to cover up the discolorations was bothering to me. And it was a constant reminder that I was flawed. But we're all flawed. Okay.
Right. But I think Nick would also agree, like, especially with black and brown skin, but especially with African American culture, to us, beauty is an even complexion. Like that's
Yes.
what the beauty in our community. It's a nice even complexion. It's putting on lip gloss and go. Some of us like a little bit of mascara. So I definitely understand when patients come to me. And I even teach this to some medical students now that I do lectures. And I will put up a lot of pictures of different patients with acne and hyperpigmentation, and I'll ask them to give me the diagnosis, and they will give me every diagnosis in the book. But I will say, guys, you're missing a key point. And I tell them, as rising doctors, if you don't address the hyperpigmentation, then we're not definitely doing a thorough evaluation and addressing that concern. It may not necessarily always be addressed at the first visit, but definitely at least just mention it to the patient, because even when I see patients with eczema and their eczema is clear, like the parents will ask me about the child, what about the dark spots? Or what about the light spots? Like, when are those going to go away? So I think, for our culture, it's just beauty is having that even skin tone. And we want our patients to have an even skin tone so that you get up, you put on your sunscreen, your lip gloss, and go.
Exactly. And I'm sorry I left out sunscreen because I'm putting
That's okay. I got you. I got you.
Now, Dr. Nick, I have a different question for you. So social media is like the home of the filter and people always put their best foot forward on social media. Have you ever seen a photo posted on social media and it's either your work or your colleague's work, and this person might be misleading the audience by portraying this image as natural?
Right. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you for having me on your show. I like the promo. The promo was hot. That was a hot promo. To answer your question, yes, it happens. It happens all the time, but people, I think social media isn't a reality. Like, people only put out what they want you to see. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times, like, I have patients who, they may be appearing on a show or something, or they may be going on vacation, 20th year reunion. They want to look their best, but they don't want people to know that they had work done. And so they get the work done and say that they went to the gym. Or then you have some at the entire other end of the spectrum, like plastic surgery has become popularized, and so a lot of times it's a contest to see who's had the most plastic surgery. So it varies. And just to piggyback on what she said about in regards to skin complexions, I think for our culture, for African Americans, what we consider as beauty, like a standard, I would definitely say that smooth, even toned skin is probably at the top of the list. Like, I have females all the time who come in and they have like hyperpigmentation under their eyes, and they want to know what exactly can be done. And a lot of times there's not a lot that you can do, but I would say even for men, smooth skin is probably very, very common. Okay.
All right. Well, I see that my other co-hosts have decided to join us. Hello, Dr. Tamika. Hello, Dr. Tamra. Hello, Dr. April. I hope you have been listening. And I hope you guys also have questions for our good doctor guest co-hosts. Let's start with April, since she's front and center. Dr. April, you have some questions for our colleagues here?
Well, I guess my first question will be for Dr. Diane. What are some tips that you can give our viewers about, how they can keep their skin hydrated and pretty and free of blemishes and things like that?
Okay, so every good skincare regimen is going to have my 3 favorite ingredients in it, which would include, number 1, a sunscreen. And I know, again, especially for black and brown skin, sunscreen, people will still look at me and say, okay, black people need sunscreen. I thought black didn't crack. But yes, we need sunscreen as well. And part of that is because if you ever notice you have aunts or grandmothers or cousins or even your parents, You may notice or see that as they get older, sometimes they can start to have a little bit of blotchiness in their skin, or their skin tone is not necessarily even like it used to be or what you remember. That is aging and skin of color. So again, discoloration is aging and skin of color. And the best thing you can do to prevent that from the very beginning is definitely start to wear a sunscreen. So there are a lot of sunscreens there are a few that are now coming out, and companies are more aware that we need more sunscreens that blend well with our skin, because we don't necessarily want to have to pick a sunscreen that makes us look ashy or pasty or have that white or kind of grayish residue on it. So more companies are slowly becoming aware that that is still needed in the field of cosmetics and products. Ingredient number 2 is going to be a retinoid. So a topical retinoid is going to be great as long as you are not pregnant or breastfeeding. Again, as long as you're not pregnant or breastfeeding. And that's because if you have acne, it's going to treat the acne. It will also help to prevent future acne. It's going to fade those brown spots that we don't like. It also helps with pore size and texture, which I think a lot of us sometimes start to notice changes as we get older. And it helps with fine lines and wrinkles. So it's like the biggest bang for your buck you can have in your skincare regimen. And then number 3 would be a vitamin C serum to really kind of protect your skin from the free radicals and pollutants and all the junk that's floating in the air. And also it does with vitamin C serums, it can really help as just an overall skin brightener or to even out your complexion. So sunscreen, retinoid, vitamin C. You don't want to skip on your moisturizer either. I find that a lot of people sometimes have oily skin and they think they don't want to use a moisturizer that's going to make them more oily. But if you don't have a moisturizer to balance out your oil production, then what will happen is your sebaceous glands or your oil glands will kick into overdrive to try to moisturize your skin. And that's where you can start to get acne or blemishes. So you definitely still want to use a moisturizer as well. And of course, your skincare regimen should be done every day with a cleanser twice a day. You do not have to spend expensive amounts of money or lots of amounts of money on a cleanser. Any cleanser is fine. Just make sure you clean your face.
Okay, thank you.
Very welcome.
Can I throw something in? Water. Drink lots of water too.
Yes.
That's real important. I have a question for you, Dr. Davis. What about, you mentioned the retinols. Is there a certain percentage that's more effective, or does it matter just as long as it has some sort of retin-A in it?
So I personally like prescription strength only because I do think it gives you a little bit more bang for your buck. For a lot of people, you may notice that you will see retinols or retinals that are over the counter versus a retinoid, which is going to be prescription strength. The retinols and retinals still have effective properties, but they can sometimes take longer to reach those effects. And sometimes they just don't have enough bang for your buck, in my opinion. But I do know sometimes for some people, using a prescription strength can be too irritating for the skin because it's too strong. So I will usually start my patients on a low percentage and make sure that they're on a very hydrating moisturizer. And then I will slowly increase them as they're able to tolerate. Probably the one that's the middle of the road that I think a lot of people can use that is over the counter is Differin Gel. It's Differin. It previously was prescription strength, but it's mild enough that now the FDA has allowed for it to be over the counter. So it's a very mild retinoid that I think a lot of people can start on, or they can start their kids on if they start to notice blemishes. But then, of course, you want to follow up with your board-certified dermatologist to make sure that you're on the right treatment regimen. But that's a good question. I don't know. What do you think, Dr. Nick?
So I mean, I like to play around with skincare products.
Okay.
This always kind of been my I just like to try different things and free things. And
okay.
So for me, like I know I've prescribed it for some of my patients. Some patients it dries the retinoids.
Right.
Retinoids, right?
Correct. Yes.
So it dries their skin out. So when that happens, I'll tell them, well, look, you can't use it every night. Won't you try it every other night? And then for me personally, the vitamin C, it kind of like burns my skin. Is it supposed to, it tingles?
It depends. Sometimes it can. Sometimes it just depends on the percentage of vitamin C in the product. It also could be if you're using a retinoid that, again, your skin is becoming a little bit more sensitized. So sometimes, again, I will usually start off patients on a retinoid first, make sure they've built up enough tolerance, and then I'll add the vitamin C in later. But it could be the percentage of the vitamin C, or it could be that if the vitamin C product is already broken down, because vitamin C is a very unstable product. So that's one skincare product where I tell patients you necessarily don't want to go cheap on, only because there's a lot of vitamin C products out there, but the stability is not up to par. And so as it's breaking down, it can definitely cause some irritation. Yeah, so you just have to be a little bit careful.
Okay, so let me jump in and just add a little bit. Let me play devil's advocate. So are you saying that if we take care of our skin, maybe we don't need all the filters? Because with social media, you see so many filters out there, and it's so many things that really are like unrealistic.
I mean, I do think definitely, I mean, we would love for reality to be reality, you know? So I personally do think if you are very consistent with a good skincare regimen, again, because not all skincare regimens are created equal. And honestly, you don't need a lot of products. I find, and I'm sure Dr. Nick would say this too, some people come in with the entire Sephora store. And I'm just like, this is way too much. Like, you only need 4 or 5 ingredients in your skincare regimen. But I do find if you're on a good skincare regimen and you're consistent, you can definitely achieve a nice glow up. Of course, yes, sometimes you may still need to go and see your dermatologist or plastic surgeon or your esthetician for a nice facial or a nice chemical peel. You know, there's definitely still things that you can do. But, you know, I think it would be nice for all of us to show, you know, our true self. But again, these filters, they give you this glow and this highlight and this cheekbone and these lips and these eyes that, you know, now slowly the perception is becoming the norm. And so it's a little bit hard. So, you know, I try to definitely, at least in practice, I encourage my patients to really stay consistent with my regimen. And the best is when my patients will send me emails of their photos. And it's usually just like them in their car with nothing on. And they're like, oh my gosh, Dr. Davis, look at my skin. And then usually I ask them, can I post it to my social media? But for me, having that real-time feedback is the biggest reward. But I think that filters is something that, I mean, because our society is just so in tune with social media and digital and imagery, you know, it's going to be something that I think we just really have to continue to talk about to try to set realistic expectations. So that's a tough question. I don't know if I really answered it.
Well, I have a question about just kind of thinking about the psychological perspective of when we talk about social media, and because I see a lot of 20, 30 somethings. And when we get into kind of comparison on what they see, and, you know, maybe they're seeing people with filters and all these things that aren't necessarily a natural look. And I'm wondering what you all are, you know, think about. How do you make the distinction between kind of maybe what's typical body dissatisfaction, like kind of typical, I'm not liking this, or I just wanted a little nip tuck here, and maybe more significant, like maybe body dysmorphic disorder, or just, and how do you handle that when you see it? Maybe when it's just kind of a little bit, maybe more of a psychological issue.
I'll take that question. So when patients come in for a consultation, I mean, as a plastic surgeon, I also have to play the role of a psychiatrist. So I have to first assess what it is that the patient wants done, and just to make sure that their expectations are realistic and that I can get them the result that they desire. And so a lot of patients, I mean, with social media, a lot of patients, they come in, and I've had, I mean, believe it or not, I've had ladies come in with like a post, like a poster board with like various pictures of women on Instagram, and they want their body to look like that. And so a lot of times, I mean, if you are, 5'5" and you weigh 200 pounds, you can't expect to have a surgery and come out and look like a Nicki Minaj or look like Cardi B or look like Kim Kardashian. That's just not realistic. And so after counseling and patients and just making sure that we're both on the same page, if I feel like I can get them the result they desire, then we can move on. Otherwise, unfortunately, I won't offer them surgery. But sadly enough, if I may not offer them surgery, but there is someone who will be willing to take their money. And, you know, then you have a patient who's dissatisfied because he or she has spent all this money on surgery, and some of them have saved up, some of them have financed the surgery, some of them have taken out loans, and they're just unhappy.
Yeah, I would definitely think like establishing realistic expectations is really important. And also kind of identifying those patients and knowing if, you know, we're on the same page, or, you know, if, you know, what they're looking for is something that I can't provide. And so when that happens, then again, I'm happy to, you know, sometimes maybe offer them, you know, definitely recommend that they may go and get a second opinion. But oftentimes, you know, for those patients that are, you know, really seeking that, you know, they will find someone that either will, again, like Dr. Nick said, take their money, or they will, you know, fly to a, you know, a different country or something to achieve those results. So it's tough.
I know both of you to be very social media savvy, both Dr. Diane and Dr. Nick, aka Dr. Nick and Tuck. What are some of the negative feedbacks that you've gotten from your great social media presence?
I think for me, I mean, it's a fine line, because, you know, the more that you put yourself out there, the more feedback you're going to get, and all the feedback is not going to all be positive. Like, I mean, I have some unhappy patients. I have some people who may just not like me. And so you have to be able to deal with the good and the bad. And so when you put yourself out there, I mean, I may put up a before and after picture, and somebody may critique my before and after picture. And so for me, I can't take, it's hard for me not to take it personal, because this is my work. And so when somebody's criticizing it, it's hard for me to just kind of like step away, but you have to. But I mean, it can be I think it's very beneficial for any type of business. And I feel like if you're in a cosmetic or aesthetic industry, that if you don't have a social media presence, then you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Dr. Nick that if you're in the cosmetic or aesthetic industry, you have to have it. I mean, when I started my cosmetic fellowship, I only had Facebook, and my fellowship director was like a 71-year-old white man. I love him to death, but he had social media, and he was like, Dr. Davis, like, why don't you have a social media account? Like, you are going into cosmetic dermatology. So I had to quickly learn that it is important, and I really use it as a tool for education, as well as to definitely show some of my work. Probably maybe one of the negative feedbacks that I have gotten is Dr. Kanisha knows me, like I love being sociable. I'm a little social butterfly, but I get a lot of direct messages with people who want me to assess their skin or their scars. I'm sure probably Dr. Nick does too. They want a consultation, you know, through Instagram. And so I always have to give them a message that medically, legally, you know, I have not established a patient-physician relationship with them. And so if they're interested, then they need to contact my office. And I do get some patients who get upset about that. Well, why do you give, you know, advice on Instagram if you don't want to give me advice? And I'm just like, I give general advice to my followers to learn. You know, these are my 3 favorite sunscreens. But, you know, if this sunscreen doesn't work for you, I mean, that's fine. But I can't give you, you know, specific advice about your specific concerns. Like, we need to establish that either through an in-office visit or a virtual visit. So I do have some followers who get upset with me about that. And it's okay. I just tell them thank you, you know, stay blessed. And, you know, usually I block them.
So speaking of which, we do have a question from the audience that wanted to know, can you use vitamin C daily?
You can. Yes, absolutely. You always want to use it in the morning. After washing your face is usually when I recommend that you put on your antioxidant products. You don't want to use it in the evening time, especially if you're using a retinoid, because that can also cause irritation. And then, there's another, and then sometimes if you're using an acne medication, such as like a salicylic acid or a benzoyl peroxide, then you may want to check with your dermatologist just to make sure so that it's not causing too much irritation. but you should be able to.
So before we get to final thoughts, I want to ask the rest of my co-hosts if they had any further questions, anything they wanted to add before we go around the circle here for final thoughts.
I just had a quick question. Was there anything in particular that you would, any tips or advice? I know not all Black skin is created equal, but just maybe something that is a bit more specific to Black skin that we should know.
It's beautiful.
But we know that.
It is beautiful. It doesn't crack, but it can sometimes fold. That's one of my colleagues taught me that. It can sometimes fold. So you know how sometimes we start to get these little laugh lines right here, or these smile lines, or sometimes you start to get little extra wrinkles, on the forehead. Or if you make a mean face, sometimes you'll get a little extra, wrinkle there. So there are some nice aesthetic treatments that Dr. Nick and I both provide that are for skin of color. I think that's maybe, I don't know if I'm going out of order, Dr. Kanisha, but maybe that's a point that I can add to tie into the question. A lot of times I think that Black people think that chemical peels aren't for me, or Botox is not for me, or fillers are not for me. And so you can definitely do those type of treatments. You can have them safely done by your board certified dermatologist or plastic surgeon, and you can definitely still age gracefully and beautifully and look like yourself. You do not have to look like a caricature. It's not going to make you look weird or anything like that, but you want to make sure that you're going to an injector that understands ethnic skin, that understands ethnic features to just enhance what you already have. So yes, I do Botox and it's totally fine.
And before we get to final thoughts, I do want to highlight you both, even though that you are in the field of aesthetics and cosmetics, cosmetic dermatology and plastic surgeon. The work that you do is so beyond the superficial, like most people just think of liposuction. But Dr. Diane, I have cried on your shoulders a many a days, even though people might think it's vain from my acne, previous discolorations, but I also know that you work with people who have scars from after trauma. And Nick, I've seen the work that you do with people of color who suffer with keloids and the lives that you have changed. Like, I have seen those testimonies, and I want people to know that the work that you guys do is not just, for the gram. And the work that you guys do is not just superficial, but it's not vain when you are healing from internal wounds that have, physical manifestation. And I want to thank both of you for contributing to the healing of so many people by what you do. Nick, I still can't stand you.
That's very kind of you. And we love what we do.
But no, I think people get the wrong idea when they hear about, cosmetics and dermatology, and especially when it comes to Black women. Personally, I know I've had this conversation so many times where people feel like it's a luxury to consider going to a dermatologist, going to a plastic surgeon, when it's something that they need help with as far as healing. And it's not always the vanity. It's what you might need in that moment as a part of your healing. So I didn't want that to be lost on our audience as well.
Very good.
There's one question for Nick. I gave a question to Diane, so I don't want to pass this question up and then we'll close out. It says, Dr. Nick, why is it hard to find cosmetic surgery for legs?
I don't think it's hard to find cosmetic surgery for your legs, but there are limitations on what can be done. Like I have patients who oftentimes they have fat ankles. There's really no great solution for that. I mean, it's probably not fat. It's probably just edema. You may have pitting edema. It can be genetic. And so sometimes there are things that just can't be treated. Like, can you get liposuction of your legs? Absolutely. Can you have your vein sclerose? Yes. But there's just certain areas or parts of the leg, like your ankle, like I said, your ankles. It just depends on the underlying cause. But there is lots of treatments or modalities that can be used to treat the legs.
All right, so we're going to go around with our final thoughts. We always end with Dr. April because she's going to give us a wonderful affirmation, but we'll start first with Dr. Diane.
Okay, one of my final thoughts is less is more. You don't need a lot of products in your skincare regimen, a nice cleanser, serum, moisturizer, sunscreen, and maybe a retinoid. So if you are confused or not exactly sure which products, then definitely go and see your board certified dermatologist, and consistency is key with any type of improvement you want to receive.
Dr. Nick, let's have it.
I would just say that, plastic surgery is for everyone. I don't think there's anything wrong with people of color getting plastic surgery. And I think it's great to start the rejuvenation process early. I don't think there's anything wrong with like getting Botox, getting fillers, just to keep yourself, your face fresh or your body fresh. And it's just all about, taking care of yourself. Just like every year, you need to go see your primary care doctor. If you have some little fine lines, there's nothing wrong with starting a skincare regimen. I mean, it's just like taking a vitamin. And so I would say if that's something that you desire, then I think you should get it done.
All right. Dr. Tamara.
I guess my final thought is just, being a psychologist, I want to kind of piggyback on what you said, Dr. Kanisha, of just, there are definitely working on the outside can be very important, and also working on the inside. And sometimes they go hand in hand, really. And if they, if you feel like, okay, there's something on the outside that especially is causing some anxiety, depression, just something that is really affecting the inside, there's definitely help for that as well. And you can always kind of couple your seeing your dermatologist and plastic surgeon also with a therapist.
Definitely. All right, Dr. Tamika, Miss Workout Queen.
Well, I just like to piggyback off of what you both said. First of all, beauty is skin deep and it comes from within. But, there are times when we do need a little extra assistance. And I've thought about getting some things done. Of course, I don't need fillers. I have full lips. But I have thought about maybe Botox or, as I age, and I'm okay with that. So I'm really glad you guys joined us today so that you can just bring out that it's not taboo, especially for us, because in the African-American community, we keep so much a secret. And now that, we have Instagram and Facebook and all of that, we can join in. Happy to know that we can join in just like the others and also have some things done to enhance our features. So I appreciate you guys.
All right, before I hand it off to Dr. April for our affirmation, I just want to remind everyone that every scar has a story. Sometimes we have healed, sometimes we are still healing, and sometimes we need help. Sometimes that help comes from a friendly sister dermatologist or a witty, wisecracking plastic surgeon I am still honored to call a friend. And I want to thank you both so much for joining us and giving us your insight. And I'm going to kick it to Dr. April for our affirmation.
Well, so today's affirmation is, I am wonderfully made and I love the skin that I'm in.
I like it. I'm wonderfully made and I love the skin that I am in.
Beautiful.
Thank you, everyone. Please be sure to follow Dr. Diane on social media. Give them your social media, Dr. Diane.
It's Dr. Diane Davis. That's 2 N's and 1 E on all social media platforms.
And Dr. Nicholas Jones, also known as Dr. Nip and Tuck.
Yes, it is Dr. Nip and Tuck, DRNIPAND, Tuck, TUCK.
All right. Thank you both. And please follow the Chamber Talk Show on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and our website.
All right. Thank you. Xavier University of Louisiana. All
Howard, HU. Come on, Diane.
Tuskegee.
That's what, HBC.
throw Prairie View in here. We throw Prairie View in
Okay, okay.
You in there. Put in there.
I love it.